Hello, so today we're going to be ranking trait-specific augments. These are augments that power up a particular synergy or trait or class in the game, and usually gives you copies of those units. Here we're going to break them down. I'm kind of going to rank them relative to each other, kind of talk about like when you would want to take them, because obviously like if you're playing around certain comps, it makes sense to take an augment that fits that comp, but at the same time, if the augment isn't really giving you that much extra power, sometimes you're better off with other options, and these can be a little bit bait, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit here. If you like my content, please make sure to like and subscribe. Normally I'm doing daily TFT guides. We're doing a little bit more for fun content as the set kind of ends. If there's a guide that you want me to cover or a topic that you want me to cover, please let me know, because like I said, I think I've exhausted a lot of the guides that would exist in the game currently. So if you want to see something like towards the end of set 15 to help you with your rank journey, also comment and let me know of something I can do, because I'm obviously looking for ideas as the set kind of goes to its ending. But anyways, let's get straight into it. So first we have Class President. So Class President, this is a Battle Academia related augment. It's basically powered up Battle Academia champs, so if you apply a power up on them, they will give a buff to adjacent allies, which is 70 HP, 8% AD, 8% AB, and Battle Academia champions will gain double, so basically it'll be 16 AD, 16 AP, and 140 HP. It's actually a decent amount of stats as well as the tankiness. The other part with a lot of these augments that we're going to talk about is the last part of each of the augments where it says gain a blank, right? A lot of times when you take these augments, you really like it when it gives you a particular unit of interest, because it's basically a copy of that unit, especially if you're re-rolling, and sometimes you take the augment just to get the copies of the units, and that can really impact the decision making with these particular augments. I find that with Class President, you're usually going to be playing with Katarina reroll. If you're not playing with Katarina reroll, I think it doesn't work that well. It might work well with Jace Caitlyn reroll, but with Katarina reroll specifically, not only does it give you the Katarina, it also sets you up in a really good way, because Katarina really likes to have base stats, because she's an executioner, so you want to have base stats then multiply with her crit, because she has crit from executioner, to then make her do giga damage. So giving her base stats works really well. Giving her HP allows her to survive really well. These are things that you want. Additionally, these stats also work well with the rest of your board, because normally you don't mind clumping with Katarina, because a lot of times you put Unstoppable on Rakan, and you kind of like you kind of clump your units anyways. That's like a standard Katarina positioning, so there's really no downside to it. And then additionally, you're always playing deep into Battle Academia with this board, so it kind of applies everything that you want. You get a lot of buffs, a lot of stats. It basically feels a little bit like Socialite that was really broken and got removed from the game. So I like it. I think it's a really solid option and an A tier for sure. Dazzling Display. This one's hard to rank. This one's for sorcerer specific. Their abilities deal, it says 0%. It's actually, I think it's like 20. I think it scales depending on stage or something. But basically, if you take damage from a sorcerer unit, then you will do less damage. So it's like a debuff to your opponent. I actually think it's okay. I like it in B tier. Number one, the great part about it is that it gives you a Lux and a Lucian. So if you're playing around Sorks, it gives you two copies of unit. It gives you two units, a copy of a Lux and a Lucian, which allows you to very easily slot in Sork onto your board. If it upgrades your Lux and your Lucian, it can be really great for tempo. Additionally, the debuff is pretty good because a lot of Sork units do have AoE. If you eventually make it to Gwen, you're basically applying, I think it's like a 20% later in the game. It's like 20% debuff on everybody on your opponent's board as soon as Gwen casts, and she definitely like will cast within 6 seconds, so it's like a permanent 20% damage debuff, which actually decent. Like for a gold augment, it's actually pretty decent, because a lot of other gold augments, you can look at them, they give you like, you know, 10 to 20% damage amp, and here it's like decreasing your opponent's damage amp, so you know you can kind of like donkey math it. It's not exactly the same, but you know what I mean. It's like it's like a decent amount. The problem is that Sorks aren't super relevant right now, and even when they were relevant, sometimes you just want more damage instead, because Sorks, a lot of the thing with Sorks, this is like anti-synergistic a little bit. Sorks want to do heavy burst damage, because once they kill a unit, they have like an overkill effect. So if you're taking an augment that debuffs your opponent so they do less damage, that doesn't really help what Sorks want to do, which is overkill. So like realistically, it's like somewhere between B and C. I'm gonna put it in B because with Gwen, it applies a pretty nice debuff, and it gives you a copy of a Lux and a Lucian. So getting 2 units, you'll see some of these other augments, you don't get a single copy of a unit, which, you know, it can allow you to play it from tempo spots as well. That can allow you to, like, you know, if you're playing towards that line, it gives you stuff that really like a starter kit that gives you like what you need in order to do well. But like I said, it could be lower because obviously it's anti-synergistic with the idea of Sorks. Anyways, escape velocity. So escape velocity, this is for crew specific. You gain 1 velocity per reroll and 10 when you level up. Crew units gain 0% attack speed for every 3, they gain, I think it's 1% attack speed for every 3 velocity. I think it got changed, or I'm not sure the exact number, but basically it just ramps up with attack speed. It's pretty good because I think that depending on, it's really hard to gauge because it depends on how much you're rolling and how many levels you actually get to, right? If you can make it to level 9, and you just have like an insane amount of tempo, a lot of times you will be able to get more attack speed from escape velocity than other attack speed augments like pumping up or things like that. So it's actually decent. It's a pretty good option. The bigger problem I have with it is that it doesn't give any crew units. So you're trying to play crew, which is a comp that needs a lot of gold in order to hit all of your 3-stars, right? If you're thinking about crew, you need a lot of gold because you have to hit everybody 3-starred or else the comp is really bad. And then you also have to push levels to eventually find a twisted fate. It's not an easy comp to play. It's a comp that you need a very specific and a specific spot for, right? It wins out, it can win, but it can also very easily go 8th if you don't hit everything. So it not giving any units is a big downside to me. And then it also doesn't help you in the sense that it only really allows you to cap really high, which I think crew caps really high anyways if you hit everything. So instead of taking escape velocity, I would rather take another augment that just powers up my board currently, right, that doesn't scale into late, or I would rather take something that helps me to hit my board to guarantee that I make it to that critical mass where crew actually is really strong. So that's why I put in C tier. I think it's a little bit more situational. Obviously, if you're really rich and you already know that you're playing crew, this doesn't hurt because it's just a buff that can work really well with your board, especially since you can basically reroll to level, which can basically just give you like infinite attack speed at certain points or feel like that. And then obviously attack speed with TF and Ziggs is really good, but it's just like a little bit more situational because I would rather take something to help me to hit my board when I'm playing crew because that's the more important part. Deepening Shadows, I put in C tier as well. This is Wraith specific, so at combat start and whenever Shadow Realm strikes, Wraith champions gain 6% attack damage and 6% ability power, gain a Jhin and a Zac. So this one I put in C tier just because I feel like it's not that great in terms of how much stats it gives, right? It's not that bad, mind you. The Shadow Realm strikes every 4 seconds, by the way. So that, like, basically you're getting 6% AD and AP every 4 seconds. So from round start, 4 seconds. So around like halfway through the fight, you're gonna gain like 20-ish, like a little bit over 20, like 24, right around halfway through the fight, AP, AD, which isn't bad. It's just that with Wraith now, you're very rarely playing deep Wraith. It's actually a little bit harder to do that. A lot of times when you're playing Wraith, you know, you need a very specific spot for Jhin. So Jhin is a little bit out of the question. Zac also has a very specific spot. If you're playing Kayle, this is decent, I think, for Kayle type of boards because she also uses the AD and the AP really well. And with Kayle, if you make it to level 9, you're capping out usually with 4 or 6 Wraith. If you have an emblem, it's usually 6 Wraith. If you don't have an emblem, it's usually 4 Wraith because your high cap is going to be around Varus with Kayle. Varus as a fast 9 option isn't that great, so that's where the augment kind of doesn't lie. And then the last unit that we can talk about a little bit is Malzahar. Malzahar seems like he would make good sense with it. It's basically like an Archangels for him that he just like scales up and he like lasts for a really long time in the fight, so you can get a lot of procs there. But it just doesn't feel like it's basically like a shitty Archangel. Like an Archangels gives 20 AP in 5 seconds. This gives 6 in 4. So it just feels like a little bit like, you know, you'd rather just take something that supports the board a little bit better. And like I said, because a lot of the Wraith boards are not playing deep into Wraith, right? Malzahar, you never play with, like, you could, but you don't often play him with 4 or 6 Wraith. Usually just playing with a vertical heavyweight or a double trouble board. So it makes it hard to get this benefit on many units. Instead, it just usually becomes like focused on one unit, which makes it have a lot less value. If you end up playing around a 6 Wraith board, then I think it's a lot better, but that's why it's in C tier. I think it's more situational. Game plan. This one's hard to judge. You mark 1 hex for strategist field. I think the hexes are predetermined if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it's like based on when you put them in, but I might be wrong. I remember people didn't understand how it worked. I don't know what the consensus was because I never got an opportunity to actually try this one out personally. Allies standing in marked hexes gain 150 health and 10% damage amp. Strategists gain 100% more. Now, it seems like it's pretty good, but it's 20% damage amp. Now, it does give a Janna and a Ziggs. That is a lot of gold. Basically, it gives you like 5 gold, worth of units. With Janna reroll, it actually made sense sometimes to take this because you do play a little bit deeper into strategists with that board. But the main thing is that the benefits feel a little bit diminishing returns, right? You're getting like a bunch of damage amp, but strategists get damage amp anyways. Like if this gave base stats, I think it would be a lot better, right? Because strategists, if you think about it, if you're playing deep into strategists, you're already getting like, you know, 50 or not 50, but you would get like triple of this, right? It would be like 30% damage amp. So then you're getting another 20% damage amp, but like you don't really want more. It's still good. It's a decent chunk of change. But the problem is that it's only on specific hexes. So you basically only get like 4 hexes, and it kind of locks your positioning, which makes it feel a little bit more of a grief. So it's kind of hard to like judge, right? It really depends on the matchups that you're fighting, right? If you're guaranteed playing like a Janna reroll, I'm sure it can be okay, but I actually want to put in C tier because the griefing of your positioning, I don't think this gives enough value for what it is, which is what makes it a little bit awkward, especially the HP, right? A big power budget of this is the HP, but a lot of times you're going to be starting it off with your backline units, which, you know, feels like it's not giving like the best of stats, and it's not spreading it to like a lot of other members on your team. Right, if you compare this like in terms of power to something like Class President gives 140 HP to all of your Battle Academia units. This one gives 150, well, it actually gives 300. It gives 300 to one particular unit. But like, you know, I would rather have 150 on 7 units than 300 on 1. You know what I mean? It just feels like a little bit weak for wear, but obviously it's good if you're playing around Janna reroll and you have a good option for it. Golden Guillotine, so I put these in D tier just to like to sort them out from the rest of the augments. Golden Guillotine is actually D tier. I'm actually going to keep it here. The loot that this gives is so dog shit, and the amount of execution you play is actually very little with this, right? A lot of times, like if you're playing something like Golden Guillotine, this is an augment that existed in previous sets, and usually you want to play it with multiple executioners because the executioner's kills drop loot and it scales with critical strikes. You want to have them have like maxed out critical strike because critical striking the loot is what makes this augment like serviceable, in my opinion. So when you're playing this, if you think about all the executioner boards, you are never playing much more than 2 or 3 executioner. There's not a vertical 5 executioner style board that makes sense in the current state of the game. So if you're playing this with lower executioners, you're basically playing like a worse Spoils of War. It's like a Spoils of War that you have specific situational conditions for, right? Where it has to be like executioner kills and the loot has to strike critically, and there's like a critically it's just not good. If you look at the loot table as well, it just feels like such a grief. Like it's very rare that this gives anything good. Like yes, it could give duplicators if you're playing Katarina reroll, but you're just better off with another augment most of the time. I would honestly, like I tried it out once or twice, like earlier in the set when I thought like maybe you can play around deeper executioner. I tried doing some variations, and ever since then I was like, yeah, it's just not good. Like it just isn't. Like it never feels like it does anything. Grand Slam. Luchadors gain 10% attack speed. When Luchador is active, Luchadors leap into battle at combat start. Luchador leaps deal 300% of their basic attack damage, gain a mundo. This one's a little bit awkward because 4 Luchador isn't that common, but this can also make a lot of sense if you are playing around 4 Luchador. The main thing is that obviously you want to be playing vertical Luchador. Playing just 2 Luchador just to have an extra little bit of AoE damage at the start of the round isn't that beneficial. I'm going to put in C tier. But obviously, if you have the 4 Luchador active and you have the Braum and everything, this makes a little bit more sense because now you're getting like, you know, 4 extra stuns and each of them is doing their basic attack damage. Braum being a 5 cost, he has really good stats, so he's going to do a lot of damage in those later game fights as well with these stuns. The starting stun is actually pretty nice, right? Obviously, like when they leap into battle at the start, that's pretty cool, and then they get 1 extra leap via the Luchador trait. But like I said, if you're not hitting 4 Luchador, I really think this sucks. And also, just in general, I think it's just like a little bit awkward. There also should be another Luchador related augment. Oh yeah, tournament. We'll get there. Hero 101. The first time you win 4-player combats, all Battle Academia champions gain 100 HP and 15% reduced mana, gain a Garen and an Ezreal. Now this augment, I know that this is going to look really weird. I'm not saying the augment itself is really broken, but as a augment that for specific traits, this augment is S tier. This is very good for Katarina. Why is it good for Katarina? if you guys have watched any of my videos, I talk about it a lot. One of the major aspects of Katarina is casting. If she can cast really effectively, she does an insane amount of damage. So casting is really, really strong for her. It's why things like over 9,000 as a fruit are good, because if you can get mana regen on her, it helps her out tremendously. The more she can cast, the more consistent and more powerful she is as a unit. This thing literally, like, it gives like obviously it gives the HP, which is one thing, but the 15% reduced mana is massive. It's actually pretty good. I think it makes it so that Katarina can cast with like one less auto, and if you pair I think I might be wrong, but I remember it being broken. I don't know if they nerfed it since the time I mathed it out earlier in the set. But either way, it's just really good. Other units that love it is also Yumi, right? Even Ezreal likes to cast, Leona likes to cast. Your whole board basically just gets to cast 15% sooner if you think about it. That's the way you can kind of think about it. Or you can get like 15% more cast, right? Like roughly, like, you know, if we're trying to like make an analogy for it. Either way, it just works tremendously for all of the units on the board. And it doesn't really, and winning 4 rounds isn't that bad, right? Like, it's not like a huge cash out mechanic, and it just applies to all of your units. So specifically with like Katarina reroll type of stuff, it's gonna work out really well. I think it's one of the better options, right? For sure. Like if you're playing Katarina reroll and you see this, you don't skip it. It's like really good for her. Like it just is. Anyways, sorry, we're back here. I'll be the arms, I'll be the head, I'll be the legs. These ones are really whack. I don't know if I should put them where I should put them. I think all of these are pretty not important because Mech is so hard to play around now. So I'm going to put them all in C tier because you can technically win with them. I don't want to put them in D tier. But basically, they've just buffed the Mech in different ways, right? When you're playing Mighty Mech, so the Mech gains extra armor and HP. Then I'll be the head, gains 20% attack speed. I'll be the arms, Mech gains 45% attack speed. The problem is, the Mech does absolutely dick all unless he's level 7, unless you're 7 Mech, right? Unless he's the upgraded, like, Giga Mech of Doom, none of these augments do anything. So they're arguably D tier. The only reason I'm not putting them in D tier is because in the chance that there's like it's a prismatic win condition. So especially for like casual players, or if you're in a lobby where they're not punishing you, you can literally just win the game on the spot by having these augments. That's the only reason it's not in D tier. Because like the problem with Mighty Mech now is that it's not even good enough to play around 7 Mighty Mech anymore. When Mighty Mech was broken, this was good because it would give you copies of some of the units, right? Like this one gives you a Gangplank, this one gives you nothing. I guess the one that gives you a Gangplank is maybe the best one. Does everything else give you nothing? I guess they got nerfed. I think they got nerfed. Did they get... when they got reworked, I think they got nerfed because Mech was broken. So now they don't give you copies of the units, I'm noticing. Before they used to give a copy of the unit. I think one of them used to give a Senna and a Lucian. So like you would take it because early game it would just give you 3 Mech, which was just good. So it was like, oh, I just have 3 Mech, I can win streak with this. So you would just take it like for tempo. But now I'm noticing they don't even give you that. I'll leave it in C tier just because like you can win with it, but like generally speaking, it's just too risky. Like you're basically hoping to Yone flip if you click any of these, because 5 Mighty Mech with these augments, like do you really think the Mech with an extra little touch of attack speed is gonna like carry your game if you're 5 Mech? The only time the Mech carries is if he's 7 Mech. So then obviously if you're 7 Mech, these make a lot more sense, but it's just hard to do that. Learn from the best. Whenever you start up a champion, they permanently gain 50% of every unique mentor bonus of the mentors on your board or bench. I think this one's a little bit weird. It's a little bit awkward. I'll put it in B tier though. You can scale up your units pretty effectively because just like giving them the extra mentor bonuses, but usually this is only for reroll lines. With Janna reroll, it might be good because Janna just gives a lot of base stats, which I think works if you're a veteran Janna. I don't know if it... I remember there was a bug with it, but I might be mistaken because like, you know, of course, don't quote me on it. I don't actually know if there was a bug. I just heard it, so I just avoided the augment a little bit. But like, it works fine if you already have the mentors. That's the problem. So let's say you have a Rise, right? Or like a Yasuo or Udyr on your bench, or Janna on your bench, right? If you're rolling for Janna 3 and you don't find a single copy of the other mentor units, you're just not getting the extra mentor bonuses every time you star them up, which is what makes it like really awkward. So that's why it's like a little bit weird. I think it's hard to play around, but I think it can get to a point where it gives you a decent amount of stats, right? Well, we should actually double check. Let's quote myself on that. So let's say you star up twice, right? You star up twice and you have an Udyr. I think that's how it works. How much stats are you really getting? 8. So you get 4, 4 and 4 and 4. And then veteran. I think it works with veteran though. And then, oh no, veteran only gives the damage amp. I don't know. Then Yasuo gives 5% attack speed. I mean, it really doesn't seem like that much. I'm actually going to move it to C tier. Because I think that even with Janna reroll, do you really want those stats? It feels like it's such a waste of time. I'm going to move it down. Power of Friendship. This one's awkward. I think this one's good. I'm going to put it in A tier. So it doesn't give you that good of a unit. It just gives you a rel. But basically, it gives 1 mana regen. 1 mana regen is really powerful. This used to be really broken when Star Guardian was broken. But basically, Star Guardians that start adjacent to at least one other Star Guardian, you gain mana regen, 20 armor, 20 magic resist. So it's a decent amount of stats. And the positioning doesn't have to be like full keepers. You basically just have to have units paired up, right? You just have to start next to one. So your backline basically, like, there's not like a huge positioning requirement is what I'm trying to say. It sounds like weird, but it works if you just do something like this. If you do this, all the units gain the power of friendship. You don't have to clump them, because it's not like extra if you clump. It's not like keepers. It's just if you start next to one, you get the bonuses, which is really nice. The mana regen is the powerful part of this. 1 mana regen is really strong, right? If you think about it, like, where's that other augment, like Crimea River? Crimea River. Your team gains 1 mana regen. After 15 seconds, increase this to 2. But like a whole ass gold augment is gain a mana regen. And this also gives you 20 armor and 20 magic resist. Now, obviously, that one gives you 2 mana regen after 15 seconds. But I argue that most fights, especially late game, if they're optimized boards, are going to end in around 15 seconds anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. But the 1 mana regen is really powerful. It just helps all your front lines cast a little bit better. Helps your back line to cast a little bit better. It can actually sway the fight pretty convincingly. In this game, 1 mana regen, if you just get it for free, like if you have to make an item for it, it's like awkward. But if you get 1 mana regen for free, 1 mana regen is 1 mana regen. It's actually pretty powerful. A tier. New contenders. Grant 50% of your Supreme Cell bonus to all champions on your team. Any champion on your team can now become a Supreme Cell. I think this one's kind of felled off a little bit. I usually avoid this one, to be honest. I'm going to put it in C tier. You get a Kai'Sa and a Kennen. Is Kai'Sa good enough now? I don't think so. The problem is that usually the bonus effect if anybody can be a Supreme Cell doesn't really matter that much because there's not like a specific board that it makes sense with. This one was really good when you were playing Cassante, right? If you didn't know, when Cassante had All Out, there was a specific Bronze for Life board where you would play Cassante with all the Supreme Cells. It looked like this, basically. Roughly speaking, right? And then you played it with, like, Mech a lot of the time, right? And it was, like, a Bronze for Life board where you played, excuse me, where is she? It was, like, this. And then you would fit in somebody else, right? Like, usually it was, like, Jarvan and somebody else for Mech. It was, like this, I think? Something like this. It was something like this. I think sometimes you dropped a Supreme Cell or whatever. But like this was really good because Cassante would get the Supreme Cell. Because your carries with this comp were Akali and Cassante. Right? That's how you would itemize. You would itemize Akali, Cassante. So like Akali would run around, do damage, and then Cassante would like clean up and be like a melee carry. So like in that sense, it was really cool. But like besides that, I don't think there's any Supreme Cell board where you really care about like another unit becoming the Supreme Cell. Because usually the Supreme Cell is just going to be the main unit, and the 50% of the bonus applying to all team, especially if you're not playing deep into Supreme Cell, it's like you're basically just giving like 4 or 9% damage amp to your team, which is basically weaker than other gold augments, right? Like if I search here, what's the one? Like Know Your Enemy? Like Know Your Enemy gives base 10 damage amp. This thing gives worse damage amp than Know Your Enemy, and Know Your Enemy has no criteria of what to play. You know what I mean? It's very like mid. Like the only time it's good is if you're playing specifically for Supreme Cell and you have a unit that you want to be the contender, which is like not that common because there's not many boards that really play into that right now. Power upload. This one I don't know how strong it is, if I'm being honest. You give the Mighty Mech a power-up. When it has the power-up, it gains 150 and 10% damage amp. I think this is in the same tier as all these other ones, right? If you're 7 Mech, then it can hurt. But if you're not 7 Mech, I don't think it's worthwhile. But it's also weird because usually when you play 7 Mech, you wanted to do Mech Pilot. So it never really made sense to specifically put the power-up on the Mech. But it's just awkward. Preemptive Protection, I think this one's B tier. It's pretty solid. Protectors shield themselves and their closest ally for 18% of their max health. Shield stack. So this is just a way of like starting the combat with a shield, which gives your units durability as well, because that's the whole thing with protectors. If you're shielded, you get durability. So it's actually pretty strong and it's pretty reliable. If you're playing a full protector front line, it makes sense. So it gives them what they want. And it just like gives the shield doesn't expire, so they basically have like a decent survivability at that point. And because the shield stack, it actually like adds up to a lot of shielding at the start, which makes it really hard to chew through the unit. So it basically can stall you out really strong or really well. Ring the Bell. This one's been bugged forever. I don't know if it's still... I think they said they fixed it, but basically after 15 seconds, your heavyweight champions gain 30% max health and 20% damage amp. Gain a Kabuko and a Zac. It gives you 2 units, which is nice, so it allows you to have that synergy. 15 seconds is a long time, so this one's a little bit awkward because you're basically down an augment for like the first 15 seconds of a fight. But heavyweights do live quite long, and the 30% max health actually turns out to be like an insane like ascension style of value for them. So it actually works pretty well. I've also saw some specific tech with heavyweight emblem. Like people used to click this with Mech, right? I think like I don't know if it fully worked with Mech, but like giving the Mech heavyweight, then the Mech would just like giga ascend after 15 seconds. I think it's B tier. It might be C tier, but it's like it's okay. It's passable. Because usually if you're playing heavyweights, the fights will last 15 seconds. That's like one thing heavyweights do, is that they live for quite a long time. And the 30% health and 20 damage amp, especially on some of the units that carry like Darius, actually is really powerful. So I think it could work out well. Raid Boss, I think, is up here as well. Your strongest bastions gain 20% max health. Actually, this one might be a little bit higher. While the Bastions guy, they transfer 20% of their armor and magic resist. I'm willing to put this in A tier. Raid Boss is just good because when you're playing vertical Bastions, what do Bastions want? Right? They have infinite armor. If you're making a tank, right, and you're trying to make a unit that's unkillable, right, what do you do when you're trying to make your unit unkillable? You try and give them everything. You try and give them every single type of stat to make sure that they're not suffering from like diminishing returns or anything like that, right? This guy, he has infinite armor and MR if you're playing around deep bastions, right? So you don't really care about making more armor and MR, right? That's not super important. What's important is giving him HP, because the HP is going to make him have like, he's basically like when you're taking damage, right? Imagine if you have infinite armor, but like, let's take the extreme examples, right? Just to illustrate the point. Let's say you have 10 million armor, but you have 1 HP. It's like if somebody hits you, you're just gonna die because you're gonna take 1 damage. It doesn't matter how much armor you have, you're just gonna die anyways, right? So that's the problem. So you need some HP to go with that armor. Every HP that you have, because the damage you're taking is getting reduced so much by your armor, it's gonna make it harder for you to kill. That's why you'd rather give some of these units HP. You'd rather balance the stats a little bit. And same thing applies with like damage amp. Damage reduction. You usually want to do like damage reduction, HP, and armor and MR, and that's how you make a really strong tank, right? I talked about it a lot with itemizations. So this is an augment now that gives you HP, right? You gain 20% max health. So this is great. It can also work really well with certain carries. I know it works well with like Shen hero and stuff like that. And then when the other bastions die, they're transferring their armor and magic resist to that unit, which of course just makes them more tanky. So especially with reroll lines, when you have one particular bastion, it works really nicely. A lot of units have scaling with their armor and MR as well. So I think it's just solid. I think the fact that it gives the HP is what makes it really good. Now, it did get nerfed. So it used to give 25% of their armor and magic resist, but I think you can't go wrong with it, and it gives you a Shen and a Rel. It gives you 2 units that allows you to more easily upgrade or play around the synergies, so I think it's pretty solid. And I think that the survivability aspect of like everybody like channeling into that strongest bastion also makes it work really nicely, because a lot of times that unit is going to be the hard to kill survivor, right? Like the Swains and the Jinzhaos and the Shens if you're rerolling. So it just works nicely like thematically with everything. Teacher's Council. I think Teacher's Council is hard to rank. Here if it here, like it's here or here when mentors were really strong, but right now mentors aren't that strong. Like there's not really like a 4 mentor board that's common that people play right now. It's just like the way buffs and nerfs have gone, it's not like a go-to comp that people try to play on level 8. But I'm gonna put it in B tier, and this one is pretty good. Basically the main downside to playing around mentor is that you basically are all in on 1 or 4 mentor, right? You either have 1 mentor that buffs your whole team, or 4 mentor where only the mentors get buffed and they get these super upgraded abilities. But if you have anything between 1 and 4, it makes the comp really hard. It makes things not work out particularly well. With Teacher's Council, this is really great for mid game. It's really great for like stage 3, stage 2, because now you can play as many mentors as you want. You don't have to be in an awkward spot where you only have 1 mentor or 2 mentor in, and then like you lose all your mentor bonuses. Additionally, you're granting your entire team the bonuses, so your entire team now gets those extra things no matter how many mentors you play. So you get the damage reduction, the attack damage ability power, the attack speed, and the bonus mana if you're playing Rise, and then if you're playing Veteran, you get the damage amp. So it works out really nicely, right? It basically works to be a team-wide buff that also allows you to, in between, be able to play flexibly around the mentor units. Now, the team-wide buff might not be that crazy strong, right? Because obviously these stats aren't like the craziest things, but you could treat it almost like an augment, right? If you had an augment that's like, your team gains this, 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 and this, you know, I would say it's a pretty good augment. But the flexibility that allows you to play around mentor is what makes it a lot better in my opinion. But like I said, mentor isn't that common of a comp right now, so I can't put it here or here. But like realistically, it's somewhere up here or here when mentors are strong, because it allows you to very easily play around those comps, especially before a veteran. Right before veteran, it was a way bigger issue because then you were forced to find a Rise. This allowed you to have a lot more stability on your journey to finding Rise. Darkness Within, the first 3 Wraith champions to die each combat summon a monstrosity. This one's C tier just because there's very few times you actually play more than 3 Wraith champions. Can I be honest? Think about taking this when you're playing Malzahar. Imagine you take this when you're playing heavyweight Malzahar. Like you have 1 fucking Wraith champion, you know what I mean? If this guy dies, you get 1 summon. If this guy dies, you lost the round, you know? G fucking G. But it makes sense if you're playing around Deep Wraith, but it's the same thing applying with Deepening Shadows, right? Those lines are a lot less common, and they're also harder to play around. But obviously, if you make it to those points, you basically get like 3 dummies, you know, it's pretty decent. But it's just like a little bit awkward. Next, God Eye Opens. This one I think is also pretty shit, if I'm being honest. Alright, this one goes in C tier. Let me explain. God Eye Opens. Every 4 seconds, God Eye grants a random soul fighter 200 shield and 12 stacking attack speed for the rest of combat. Now, this augment is horrible because there are so many, like the thing with soul fighter, right, is that you don't want to buff these units. You want to buff the Samira, you want to buff the Gwen, you want to buff the units that actually matter. The problem with this is that it can just grief you by buffing a unit that you didn't want to get buffed in the first place. So that is just really, really bad. So the only time I see God Eye opens, there's actually a little bit of tech that you can do with it, right? If you want to stack the procs on the correct units, what you do is you play this when you're not playing a lot of Soul Fighter. I've seen people take this when they're playing 2 Soul Fighter, and that way their Samira and their Set are just every 4 seconds getting a buff, which works out to be really strong. Right? That's like a very counterintuitive and specific scenario, but even in those boards, when you're not playing 8 Soul Fighter, it's very rare that these are going to be the units that are going to like single-handedly carry, that you're dedicating an entire gold augment for. So it's just a little bit awkward. I don't think it's particularly great early game. It's like fine, but like it's just like the problem is the randomness of it makes it bad. So you very rarely want to like go all in on this, because even if you're playing Soul Fighter, you think that it would buff your team and make things good for them, but like a lot of the time you're just like tossing buffs on like random units and hoping you lottery into the correct ones, and that's the issue with it. The strongest survive. Whenever an ally dies, they grant the supreme cell with the most damage, is around 8% of their max health. I think this one's pretty shit. I really think this one doesn't matter that much. I'm gonna put it in C tier as well. Pretty uncommon. You'll notice a trend here that a lot of these augments I kind of don't really regard as being very strong. I know that I'm kind of explaining them, and I hope that the explanation is making a little bit of sense. When I'm playing a lot of the comps in the game, I very rarely click any of these gold augments. And I think most people, like, if you look at like a lot of the players that I watch that I also learn from, because, you know, I'm not a pro player. I don't make, like, you know, bands and bands. I'm not at Worlds, you know what I mean? So I still, like, everywhere I look, these augments are usually just like very hard avoidance things. That's why a lot of them are ending up in C tier, and I'm kind of explaining it through it. Some of them make sense with certain boards, some of them are really strong with certain boards, but most of the time a lot of these augments kind of feel like they do almost nothing besides like in very specific spots. And because they're very specific, that's why I'm putting them in C tier, right? I'm not saying that they're like unclickable, you never use them ever in the game. I want to make that very clear. I'm trying to give you guys examples of when to use it. Even God's Eye Open, I said, hey, this is pretty bad in certain spots because of RNG, but I've seen it used in these particular spots, and then it's a lot better, right? That's something where it's like specific, so I can't really say it's like a B tier, like an average augment that you just click whenever. It's something that you got to be a little bit more careful about. You have to put a little bit of thought into them. And a lot of times it might not make sense. Even if you are playing the correct traits for the units, it might not be the one that makes sense on your board. Space Cam. Whenever you upgrade a 1 cost crew champion, gain a 1 to 3 cost crew champion, gain a Malphite. Oh wait, I think this one is kind of shit. It's kind of bad. How much gold is it? Let's say the best case scenario, right? The best case scenario is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times 3, 18. In the best case scenario, this gives you 18 gold worth of units. But that's like the best case scenario, because only when you upgrade the 1 cost crews. So I don't like it. I'm gonna put it in C tier. Now it could make sense, obviously, if you're playing around crew. It gives you a Malphite. If it upgrades your Malphite instantly, maybe you can tempo with it. The problem is it's only the 1 cost crew, and you gain a 1 to 3 cost crew champion. So like you might not, like, you get basically 6 copies of crew champions with this. That's all it gives you, is 6 copies. Is that enough for it to be B tier? 6 copies of crew champions? I mean, it helps. I don't know. I would be cautious clicking it. I'd probably click it if I was playing crew, just for sake of like security, but I don't think it's like a high cap augment. I think you probably have better options, because 6 copies of units isn't that much, to be honest. At least to me, it's not that much. But maybe we'll move it up. Tiny Team. I think Tiny Team is still okay. We're gonna put in B tier though. I don't think it's broken such that you play it all the time, but it still makes sense in a lot of like fast 9 tempo Bastion lines where you're playing around Jinx. But basically, if you field 3 or less Star Guardians, you get like an additional 100% bonus. It was broken for a really long time, but they nerfed it to such a point now where it's pretty average. It's not something you have to instant click. It's more so something that you're taking when you know that you're only going to play a specific amount of units. Obviously, this fits really nicely if you're playing around fast 9 Seraphine. Right, Seraphine with Bastions works really nicely because like Seraphine's bonus for Star Guardian is really powerful. Alright, just gives a bunch of stats, right? And then if you have that as well, it like duplicates that. It makes it like double, so it's like really strong. So really, the only time you want to click this is like if you're trying to angle Seraphine, or if you're playing like a Jinx board where you're playing like Bastion Jinx or like a Volibear Jinx in between board on your journey to level 9. But it's not something I would like take early to strategize around, but it is really strong still in those spots. Tournament favorites. This one I actually like. I actually like this one a little bit. It gives you a Nefuri and a Callista. Soul Fighter is decent at just like farming top 4s. Basically, this gives you copies of units. It got nerfed at one point, but basically gives you loot, and it could also guarantee you a Gwen and a Samira, right? Like if we go to the tables, I'll show you what it looks like. It's not that good, so that's why it's only B tier. Sometimes these augments are really broken, but this is the tournament favorites, right? It gives you some gold. It gives you some gold. But then at breakpoint 6, it gives you a Samira, and breakpoint 7, it gives you a Gwen. So a lot of times, if you play this from a good opener where you have like decent tempo, and Soul Fighter is good early game, you get a lot of stats, so it makes it really strong. You can actually guarantee a Samira, and it gives you the components. So as a gold augment, usually a gold augment, you would consider 3 components to be the average gold augment. With this one, even if you don't make it to Gwen, you get 2 components, 15 gold, 20 gold, 24 gold, and a Samira by later in the game. It's actually decent, right? It actually gives you like a gold augment's worth of value, and it's not too hard to cash it out. I think most people usually get to the Samira. The Gwen is a little bit hard, but if you get to the Gwen, you also get a copy of Gwen, which is great. So I think that it's really good. I just think that like you have to play it from being really strong, because it's like a cash out thing, right? Now it gives you a Nefiri and a Callista, so that helps you. You get 2 copies of units, or sorry, you get 2 units, which can help you to upgrade or have copies of them. So it's definitely like a solid augment, B tier for sure. Tournament Titans, luchadors gain 5% attack speed. Whenever you win player combats, luchadors grow in size and permanently gain 2% attack damage and 20 health. Now this one's really weird because I don't think it's related. Am I crazy? I forget. This one's like decent from a good. I think this one's actually. I don't know how to rank this one. Let's assume you 10 streak. You get 20 AD and 200 health. Are you really 10 streaking? Okay, let me explain why I'm having trouble ranking this. This one you can win out with. I've seen people win games with this augment, because if you actually have an insane opener for it, it gives you a Mundo and a Gnar. Imagine you have a Mundo 2. Imagine this gives you an instant Mundo 2 on stage 2. You stack up 10 AD on Mundo and 10 AD on Gnar, and you get an extra 100 HP just on stage 2. It actually can ramp up and it can put you to a critical mass pretty fast. But it's only with, I've only seen this do okay if you start with like 2 Mundos and this gives you a Mundo 2. You know what I mean? Which is so specific. Because the problem is, if you don't have that, you're just down an augment trying to win rounds. Because, like, let's say you don't win streak, you get such little AD and HP, that by the time you make it to playing, like, a 4 luchador board, you already have to find the Braum later, and then you also have to find, like, the Volibear. I saw one person win out, right? What happened is they 10 streaked. They had this, they had a Mundo 2, a Gnar 2, and they had, like, a Guinsu. So they just went Guinsu Gnar, Mundo 2, they won every round on stage 2, they won every round on stage 3, then they went to level, then they basically just went fast 9 at that point, because they rolled down level 8, they hit a Volibear, they swapped in their Volibear, they won a couple rounds, they lost a couple rounds, then they made it to 9, and they got a Braum, and they played like thing on stage 5, and they just won the game, because at that point, they stacked up so much. I think they had like 40 AD, like I don't know how much it was, it was an insane amount. It was like over 30 AD bonus, which is just like up a whole bonus fruit on all your luchador units, and like an extra 300 HP. And Braum with those stats was fucking broken. So like that's what I mean. But it starts from having a very specific opener. Excuse me. Transfer students. At the start of every stage and after every carousel, gain 2 random 1 to 3 cost Battle Academia units. I think this one's solid. If you're playing around the reroll, it does give you copies of the units. You can easily get like an Ezreal 3, Garen 3 alongside the Katarina, and Garen scales until later. It's a bit slow though. So it's the start of every stage and every carousel round. So basically you're going to get 4 copies of the units every stage. It's not that much. Especially if you're rolling, you can actually low roll them pretty hard. This is really good, obviously, if it just gives you a bunch of Rakons and stuff. But because it's 1 to 3 cost, there's actually so many of them. That's why it's not like A tier or S tier, right? It's because there's so many of them that you often miss, which makes it just feel like a little bit like a gold generation, right? Like obviously if you high roll, I've taken this before and I've high rolled, right? Like one time I took it and it gave me like 3 copies of Rakan, and I instantly had Rakan 3, and I just like full tempoed and I won 100 strides, won the game. You know what I mean? But like if you look at it, most of the Battle Academia units are 1 to 3 cost. So getting 2 copies of them, like what if you just, like you have a, like, you know, obviously you're playing Katarina reroll, you want these ones more than anything. But like if you get copies of these ones, it makes it a little bit awkward, right? And if you get a mixed copies of them, like let's say like these are your units, you get 1 copy of each of them, right? Like on average, that's like maybe something you would expect to happen. It can be a little bit of a grief. So it's still gold, like gold is gold, but it's just like a little bit awkward. So that's why I put in Beach. I don't think it's up there. Unceasing, I think this one's A tier. Basically your Juggernauts gain 10% max health shield for 5 seconds whenever one of them dies. It's actually pretty massive. And it also gained 2 more durability. So it's pretty good. It allows the units to survive pretty well, and Vertical Juggernaut is pretty common as a frontline trait. So I actually like it quite a bit. And it gives you an Aatrox and a Mundo. So it gives you 2 units, which buffs it, makes it a lot better in my head. Adaptive Style, I don't think this one's in the game anymore, so I'm going to leave it in D tier. If it is in the game, duelists aren't that common, so it's somewhere between B and C. Then precise shot. Every 4 seconds, all snipers champions fire a shot that deals 85% of their basic attack damage to the lowest health enemy within range. I think this one's a little bit awkward to play around C tier just because you don't play that many snipers. There's very few boards that play vertical sniper. Even the Jin lines now don't play that deep into sniper often. So it's a little bit awkward. So I put in C tier. Anyways, those were the trait-specific augments. Hopefully this video was a little bit informative. I tried to explain my thought process throughout them. A lot of times I rank a lot of these and I kind of shove them all into B tier in the grand scheme of things. If we're looking at them specifically for the units and how common they are with the specific boards, there's a little bit more separation on this tier list. And as you can see, a lot of them I don't really value that much. That's a me personal thing. Of course, you can just click them for copies of the units and play around the trait and have a fun time playing the traits. But in general, a lot of them feel a little bit awkward with the particular traits and the units. But like the upper echelon of ones, I'd say B and above, are all really good, right? I think that they're all really solid, and often they're like pretty obvious clicks if you're playing around those traits. And the other ones a little bit more questionable, that you have to actually think about what board you're trying to play and what board you're trying to make. But anyways, thanks for watching. Have a great day and see ya. Bye bye. Hope you're having a great weekend.